Hello, everyone. This is the Nameless One, and tonight we are going to be doing an Alicorn discusses about theories and headcanons. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody: don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell. I would say follow on Twitch, but multi-stream said no. So go ahead and go check out my Twitch. We're actually going to be having a major stream for that on Monday. Other than that, more on how to support the channel at the end. Let's see. And for introductions, we will go ahead and start with... You know what? KO hadn't been here in forever. KO, you get to go first. Who you are, what you do, and favorite headcanon and or theory.
I can do half of that. So hello. My name is KO, and yes, it's pronounced KO, not cow. I have to clarify that often. Normally, I'm like a musician guy that does a lot of FNAF stuff most of the time. Headcanons and theories aren't exactly my forte. I'm not really good at coming up with my own, but I do enjoy listening to what others have to say about theirs, and I like discussing like the possibilities and the impossibilities of those fun theories. So that's why I'm here.
Okay. Rarity, your turn.
Hi. I do a lot of things. I write and voice act and do the arts and cosplay and I'm magic. And my favorite headcanon is Applejack is trans.
Okay. Venture.
Hello, my name is Venture Torb. I'm a writer. And my favorite headcanon is that Sunburst and Sunset Shimmer are siblings.
Ooh.
I think I've heard that one before.
Yeah.
That is a good one, actually.
It's
I
a
didn't think about
popular
that.
one.
Yeah.
Nashi.
Hello, I'm Nashi. I both work on art and I do streams. I also write here and there. And my favorite theory is the Tree of Harmony got itself killed on purpose.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I think I've actually heard that one as well, too.
Huh.
I haven't heard that one as much as the sibling one, but though. Saf.
Hi, I'm Sapphire Sistrine. I am a musician and game designer, and my favorite headcanon is that Equestria is the civilization that arose out of the fallout of the war between Cybertron and Earth.
Let's freaking go.
Oh, whoa.
One I
I
got
don't know
it
about
here.
that one.
I haven't heard that one in that much detail, but I have
Like,
heard
I've
about
heard
the...
There's not much detail to it, so
I've heard a lot of theories of like Equestria being a post-human Earth, but not specifically that one.
I like how
That
mine's
is-
like super character specific,
Actually,
and then we have that.
considering the crossover they had at one point, it's more possible than I previously thought it was, actually.
Yeah.
And Scarlet.
Hi, I'm Scarlet, and I'm a musician, a little bit of a fanfic writer at times, also a little bit of a game dev. I kind of dabble in a lot of everything. If you've followed my channel for a while, you've probably seen a lot of various different things that I post there. And I think my favorite headcanon, it's not as, like, it's kind of a silly one, but I love it, is probably the one that Little Shy posted ages ago about Twilight being the answer to the universe and everything.
Aw.
Because of her race number 42 in Running of the Leaves.
Oh gosh.
nice.
Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. You don't know who I am. welcome to the channel. You're more than welcome to stay and enjoy the content, but I'm the Nameless One. I do everything from theories to live streams to podcasts to fanfic writing to running many communities. And my favorite, and this one is kind of more of like, it depends on who you ask on whether or not it's a headcanon / theory. But the fact that, because a lot of people don't take the comics as canon and don't like to think of EQG as a separate universe, but mine is that the entirety of MLP happens within the constraints of a multiverse.
I do have a comment on the comic part, actually.
Oh,
So this was actually done both in like a final little comic, like official comic, and was mentioned by the creators themselves. The comics are what is called a B canon, where unless it's something explicitly counteract or contradicted by the A canon, which would be the shows, the movies,
in season 10's comics.
Everything that happens in the comics is canon.
Yes,
That makes sense. Yeah.
I am aware, but you try fighting that fight in the YouTube comic section. I have an entire video that was spawned because of that. But we're actually going to do.
I can imagine.
We're going to do a comic video later on down the line, but it kind of fell through for the last attempt for it.
I do hope that one goes through soon. I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, it'll be added in to the end of like the pre-existing list. Anyways, before we get started into like diving into headcanons and theories, we're gonna actually talk a little bit about them, give like a definition to the difference between the two, as well as like whether or not, because I have seen people that have the opinion that, you know, they're really bad for shows and whatnot, and some people think they aren't, and so we'll talk about that a little bit. But to start off with, I think we'll go around the table and see what everybody thinks about the difference between a headcanon and a theory is. And I'm gonna make Nashi go first.
Okie doke. So, I've actually been thinking about this for a bit. I see as like a headcanon is something that like someone might like you particularly think is like, oh yes, this is this way. Like, whereas a theory is like it's something you would like to see it happen. It's something that makes sense to you, but like you're not as like hooked into believing that it is that way as opposed to headcanons.
Okay, Venture.
Yeah, a headcanon, I feel like you don't need. Well, it's good. Evidence is good with a headcanon, but you don't really need that much evidence for a headcanon. Whereas as a theory, you need a lot. Almost a considerable amount of evidence for a theory, because you need to explain it in further detail why you think that this is the way it is, and here's the evidence for it.
Okay. Rarity.
For me, the line's a little bit blurred, but I think of theory when you actually talk about like the way it's described in science. You've got a hypothesis, you have a theory, you have law. Law is a thing that is proven true like pretty consistently. A theory is something that could be and has evidence behind it, and a hypothesis is just like I think it might be like this. Like it's the step before. I feel like headcanons are kind of the step before, where you have the initial thought, and a theory is when you continue it and support it and find out like a little bit more, and there's an internal consistency to it. But I also have like shades of headcanon that kind of blend in with theory, where I have like, I like it, but I don't actually believe it. I like it and it's feasible, but like there's nothing technically supporting it except that I know that like it's possible and like likely. And then there's support for this in the show, and then you can extrapolate this from the show based on like post canon, which is slightly different because it's like it has to build off of what's already there, what might happen. You have to make the prediction. So it's I kind of end up blending it. I just have shades where somewhere in the middle you hit on a theory where it's just like it's supported well enough that it's a thing that somebody could be convinced of, but it's still a headcanon. You don't know if it's true. It's just something that you like thinking about. Like, I think the difference is, like, a theory is something that you kind of, like, test your brain about. A headcanon is just something you like. And it doesn't have to be supported, but it can be.
Saf.
I think along those similar lines, that I believe that like a headcanon is more of just either a wishful or just a personal belief of how you think something is. That doesn't have to be based off of evidence, whereas a theory is usually more grounded in evidence, and it's something that people's minds like to chew on. So doesn't exactly have to have evidence to it, as long as it's something like really that makes you think about it, right? But anywho.
And Scarlet.
I kind of like all these answers. So I think the way I approach it is a bit different. Because like, yes, I agree with various points of everyone's perspectives on this, but I think for me, headcanons in particular are very much a perspective that you're like, I kind of like to think of it this way. This seems like this could work, and it doesn't necessarily line up with all of the concrete evidence in the show. Whereas a fan theory is something that you've thought about long enough that you can provide a lot more robust arguments for, and with that you can just sort of extrapolate it into this very massive theory. It could go into crazy territory that others might be less keen on believing, but that's kind of what makes them all fun.
Okay. And for me, I mainly agree with like that kind of idea. The headcanon is one of those things where theories can be headcanons, but not all headcanons are theories. Because theories, you do have as much supporting evidence as you can get. One of the things that I like doing is pulling from things like the comics, the surrounding books, and materials that are provided by Hasbro. Anything that is official source, in my opinion, is something that you should be able to use as supporting evidence to a theory. Whereas a headcanon could be just literally, I feel like this is true. And that is your only supporting evidence. So next, before
I don't think you called on me, did you?
I
Did
don't
it?
think he did.
I don't.
oh shit,
I didn't.
Too many
Just-
people on this call.
Man, you're leaving KO out, man.
Like, I know I'm not the best pick for this topic, but come on, man.
I know.
Go ahead, KO, go
Look,
ahead.
we get that he doesn't know anything about headcanons and he shouldn't even be on this podcast in the first place. But damn,
I'm surprised
you
I
don't have
was
to treat him
picked,
like
to be
that.
honest.
Yeah.
Go ahead, KO.
Okay.
It's been a long day.
So-
Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. So one thing I want to add to what the others have already said is that I've noticed one of the main differences between theories and headcanons is more so the contents of them, as if theories seem to be taken like a little bit more, I guess, quote unquote, seriously, and they're more focused on kind of like serious topics or plot points about the show, while headcanons usually aren't. For example, a headcanon is something like, oh, I think this character maybe likes this character, or kind of more so about their likes or dislikes, while theories kind of more so go along the lines of, oh, this character is actually secretly working for the bad guy, or vice versa. Or usually they have like a little bit more importance to them, while headcanons are just more so kind of like a personal thing, if that makes sense.
I like that a lot, actually, that answer.
I don't
Yeah, that
think
makes
that's
sense.
necessarily true for me, just because you can have an incredibly well-supported theory that Sunset's favorite color is purple. Like,
Well, yeah, that's
you
true.
have, like, I
Like,
think
yeah, I'm not
that,
saying they're
like,
like.
I know,
I'm
but
not
for
saying
me,
they're-
I think maybe
I'm sorry.
part of it is that a theory is something that can't be proven, and part of the joy is trying to figure out what's feasible, and there will be competing theories, but that's part of the fun of a theory. Versus
Well-
a headcanon where it's kind of like you settle it for yourself. You don't care what the truth is.
I would say
Yeah,
that with theories, the theory is the idea is that it can eventually be proven by the show, and sometimes is. Or in Sawtooth's case, about half of his got ran over by the show. But the with headcanon, it could be something as like there's a lot of people that at this point I'm pretty sure there isn't a character within MLP that has not been given a gender identity or sexuality that from a story writing standpoint they have no real basis for. Because I've seen everything from Twilight being trans to Trixie to there's one character that like everybody accepts as like the main canon trans character. It's like Carmel something.
Yeah, Caramel.
The one
Yeah.
who saw transition.
Yeah, but it's that is more along the lines of headcanon, because like you have to take very threadbare. If you like, not everybody bothers to prove it. Because
yeah, but I do think that there's an element when it comes to headcanons like that where it goes into theory specifically because topics like that are things that the show weren't really allowed to broach. Like, it wasn't until very, very recently that trans characters were allowed to be open on TV, and if there was queer coding happening in 2010, in 2012, it would be something that would have to be veiled. So queer coding has its own specific, like, secondary thing because you're not allowed to show it on children's TV, even though, like, queer kids exist and they should be allowed to see themselves. And that's part of why my pick was a headcanon like that. They have I feel like there's just a slightly different thing where you know that the staff may not have been allowed to say it, so you have like more like room to interpret it, knowing that like if there was evidence, it would be suppressed.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I've seen somebody try to claim what was his both biceps was trans. And I'm just like sitting there looking at it, it's like, which
I
direction?
don't know about that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that either.
It's the definition
That's one of the headcanons
testosterone.
I like, so I'm just gonna keep it now.
There's a lot with specifically with the gender identity ones. People want to identify with characters, so they project their identity onto some of them.
Mm-hmm.
So not all of them have evidence, but people will look for it.
But if there's evidence to find, then there's evidence to find.
Well, it's kind of the same with like.
Yeah, but I'm saying it can broach a theory because not everybody is just projecting. Sometimes you see evidence.
Yeah,
And
the
it
caramel
might
thing
be a
wasn't
theory.
evidence.
It wasn't.
Well, I mean, kind of, because it was literally just it's a background asset, right? And one, it was a stallion, and then you see another one. It's a mare. It's a mare, and then there's another one and it's different, and that could so easily be chalked up as literally background artists just we're trying to make more generic stuff.
Yeah,
if
but
it happened in any season later than season 2, I would be more willing to agree to it. But like, season 1 background ponies are literally like, here, have
They're
a
all
color.
Lyra and
Here, have a
Bonbon.
main.
Copy paste, copy
Here-
paste,
Yeah.
copy paste.
Yeah.
Here's
So,
the thing about that, though. We know that as an external reason. We have an out-of-universe reason why a thing happened. But there has to be an in-universe reason for a thing to happen, too. And why
that-
can't there
I
be an
think that's-
in-universe reason that Caramel is trans?
There-
Like,
don't
we know
think
there's an
that's
external reason, but there
universally
needs
true.
to be an in-universe reason, too.
that
No, I
is that
see-
is
I see
actually
what-
yeah, that is actually a huge thing in like the theorist community. Is you don't just chalk up things to things like animation errors and stuff like that. That's the lazy answer.
Mm.
Mhm.
And
You
would even argue that magic is also the lazy answer, but
but
I disagree with that.
Magic sells everything.
well, actually, with the you're gonna get me started on this, but with the way that they show, there are actual rules to the magic in My Little Pony. They're very soft rules, but they do exist if you know what you're looking at. And
Yeah.
given that Hasbro also owns WotC, looking at it through a D&D lens actually does help quite a bit.
Yeah.
But
It is worth noting though that Hasbro, like,
is lazy.
there's no, it's just Hasbro.
I mean,
had
you're not
some
wrong.
involvement in it, but the people who really made the show good was the DHX staff, which
Yeah,
was
the
a
people
contracting
worked
company
so
outside
good.
of Hasbro.
Hasbro made requests and they made it work.
So we're going to move on to the next portion, and the next portion is a question that I've actually would have thought was an easy one, but I've seen many people get into massive arguments over. Are headcanons and theories actually good for a show or a community? In other words, are you a show purist where only the things that you can very obviously see are the only things that exist? Or are you one of the ones that believes that the creativity outside of it, with the theories and the fanons and headcanons, are all important as much as the show is? And
If I may start with that, I think that it's fine, and I think it's actually healthy for a fandom to have those ideas and discussions, because it means they're engaging the whole idea of the show with their mind, and they're engaging each other. I think that it starts to become unhealthy when people try and push their headcanons on other people and then try and say, like, oh, if you don't believe this, then you're a bad person. Like I've seen
Or not a true fan.
or like I've seen happen, unfortunately, with the trans Trixie thing.
oh god, I remember when that first popped up on
Oh,
Twitter.
Like, yeah, like I don't care if you think that Trixie's trans. That's okay, but don't call me like transphobic if I don't think she's trans. Like,
Yeah.
that's
That's not
not
healthy.
right. Like, yeah, that's just
Yeah.
causing conflict and division, right?
Uh-huh.
So as long
And
as
then,
we can accept that we're all going to have different viewpoints and that's okay, then it's okay.
Yeah, for sure. And then
Yeah.
one other thing I'd like to kind of add to that is in a healthy way, it's also very helpful for the show staff because they can see what they've created and see how fans and the community can take that and expand upon it, and it might give them ideas for the future of the show.
Yeah.
But it's also unhealthy
Hooves.
if the fans or the community start to try and push their headcanons or theories on the show staff, because then that's
They start to think that they can
overcrossing
control the
boundaries.
show.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
actually, there's a good example of that, or there's one good and one bad example of that. The good example is Derpy. Derpy was initially a headcanon based off of a silly mare that had derpy eyes and a scrunchy nose in the first episode, right? And then would show up and like said muffins in the background. Like those types of things, she evolved from the fans engaging with that background character and
I believe
bringing it
that's
to life.
also where Lyrabon came from too.
Yes, that is where Lyra and Bonbon came from. And then another example The bad example is the shipping. The shipping issues.
Yeah.
Because by the end of the show, I don't know if y'all remember, but Jim Miller, was it Jim Miller?
Jim Miller.
Was his name? Said on Twitter that they were not going to ship anyone because if they shipped anyone, the whole fandom would get pissed off. And
Yeah.
that's an unhealthy
Hasbro-
place. Yeah, that's an unhealthy place to be in.
And then Hasbro forced them to in the finale.
Theoretically. Except for with Pinkie Pie, bro. Man,
Yeah.
Weird Al really
He
ended
really-
up marrying Pinkie Pie.
He
I don't mind that.
rubbed
I like
it
that
in too.
one.
I kind of love that there's pictures that circulate all the time where it's like Weird Al with "I stole your waifu."
yeah.
Yeah.
That was like my one ship that I had in the entire show, and I'm just so glad it came true. I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yes.
You see,
Real
that's
quick,
the one
real
that
quick.
was like.
Hold on. Nashi has been trying to say something for a little bit
Sorry.
now, so we're gonna let Nashi talk.
Oh, shoot, I'm sorry.
It's all right. But yeah, I do think that headcanons and theories make for a healthy, not just fandom, but just like environment of discussion as a whole. Because it's like it gets people talking. It gets people, it's another avenue for people to bond over the show they like. And trust me, I have seen what happens in fandoms where a lot of people want to be purists, and it's not pretty.
Mhm.
Let people have fun. Let people theorize.
And by extension, I'm going to add on to that. Fanfics also are just fine. Even some of the stranger ones or some of the more violent ones out there, they're not. If they're not hurting people and they're not like going into illegal subject matters, and then there's no reason why a grimdark fantasy type fic, based in My Little Pony is a bad thing.
Exactly.
You defending something there? You got something personal going on?
Well, I know a prominent member of the analyst community that I was on one of his podcasts, and I spent the entire time basically telling him, no, just because you don't like them doesn't mean they're bad.
Lol.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm not gonna name names, but I'm sure if you go looking hard enough, you can find the thumbnail with me on it.
I think that headcanons are fine as long as it you don't let them make you toxic
Right.
when you
Yeah.
start attacking people for not sharing them.
Yeah. I think that's a general consensus at this point. Like, if you have a headcanon, feel free to defend it, but don't start calling names and slinging mud and anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't start expecting just because you think a thing doesn't mean everyone around you is gonna think the same thing too.
Or that they should.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
Because, just because I say one thing about how I believe one of my theories in the show is true doesn't mean that everybody else has to believe what I say.
Yep.
Kind of like how Josh Scorcher kept getting a lot of flack for loving Mysterious Mare-Duel in the early days of the fandom, but it was mostly healthy in the sense that it turned into kind of a running joke throughout cons.
I love this saying that Mysterious Mare-Duel is best pony because she can be any of the main 6 except Rainbow Dash because Rainbow Dash is trash.
Um,
I don't believe that. I like Rainbow Dash, but it's funny.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that that also kind of covered why it would be good for the show as well, because we kind of touched on the idea that it gives them the ability to see what would engage the fans in the example of Derpy Hooves. But I think now is the time that everybody's been waiting
You
for.
forgot me.
I thought you said something.
Uh-oh.
No, I tried to make a comment and you said Nashy's been trying to talk for a while, so I didn't say it.
All right,
why did you
Red,
just
got
try-
the floor?
Okay.
My opinion on the health of the fandom doesn't matter. Continue.
Oof.
What?
No, go ahead.
Hold on a second.
Especially headcanon.
You okay? Fine. You're just gonna lead us on like that and just drop it, man.
I mean, I have something that I
I
can
mean,
add.
just don't forget that your headcanons may be good and they might be theory level and all that. Just remember that they're not proven. They're not true. So, like, also, I have this thing where it's like, I actually enjoy a lot of headcanons that I don't share. Like, the people who are like, oh, main 6 molecule, it's a funny joke. Unless you hear it every single day for 6 months.
Oof.
Like, please, you guys, I can't handle this anymore. Stop saying it's canon when it isn't. Just remember, your headcanons are not technically canon, so don't treat them as if they are. Just enjoy that it's a funny joke.
You spend a lot of time on Tumblr and Twitter because I see that all
No,
the time.
I don't see it. I don't have a Twitter, and I don't spend much time on Tumblr. I spend my time on Discord, surrounded by queer people who love the polycule so much. And I'm like, I can understand why you like it. I think it's a fun idea, but like, don't pretend it's canon.
What's polycule?
It's
We'll teach you later, honey, when you're older.
It's a polyamorous relationship.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. I guess they just got tired of getting called thruples and things like
What?
that.
Oh no! They
What?
can be more. They can be a whole molecule. You can have like triple bonded ones, and then just one
Polycule.
guy who's only dating one of them.
What?
Yeah.
Biology class.
That's interesting.
Oh no.
I think that's
Um,
more chemistry. You know, love chemistry.
Oh, chemistry. Yeah, sorry, I'm stupid.
Yeah. Think like Twilight is a carbon atom, and she can accept yay many bonds.
Oh my goodness.
Like someone else is like a hydrogen atom. They can only take
I don't
one.
know
I'm-
why,
I'm
but that
scared.
that
This is
thought just
too
broke
advanced for
my
me.
brain.
I'm scared. This is too advanced for me. Can we go back to like human Equestria stuff, please?
Mode.
No,
Um,
I'm joking.
If
KO.
one thing that I also wanted to add to, one thing that I think also can help with the fan theories and stuff like that is depending on what the actual like canon stuff is, like what the actual show is. Some shows are kind of meant to thrive off of that kind of thing, like Gravity Falls, for example.
True.
So some shows are better suited for it, and they can heavily thrive off of that kind of thing. However, some shows aren't quite meant for it, and I can't think of any examples off the top of my head. But it all kind of depends on
NCIS.
the content. What is that?
NCIS.
Oh. Hmm.
Like, why would you make up headcanons about NCIS? Like,
Abby Shudo went to heaven, and then
I'm
she
forgetting
stayed
what.
there.
the crime investigative show.
Oh, it's a
Yeah,
crime.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think he meant CSI, not.
No,
CIS is like-
NCIS is still a crime investigating show.
Yeah.
It's focused on the Navy.
I want to see a
Gotcha.
fan theory about cops.
That's just called. Oh, yeah, I was about to say that's just called the show Cops.
Yeah.
That's just called Twitter. That's just called Twitter's
What if-
opinions.
What if the bad boys were bad girls?
Whoa.
Anyways, does anybody else have anything else they want to add to this before we get on to the main event?
We chilling?
I think we're good.
Okay. So, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go. I'm gonna just do it in a line so that way I don't accidentally miss someone. Because apparently my brain is just too fried today for playing musical guests.
Mood.
We'll start with Scarlet, and I will be the very last one. And then what we're gonna do is you choose either a headcanon or theory that you want to present to the audience, and then we can poke at it and ask questions and clarifications, and if we get into a debate, as long as it is respectful, then so be it.
Right.
So yeah, we'll start with Scarlet.
Oh gosh, you're putting me on the spot to choose just one? How can I? Oh man. Because I have quite a few that I could just blabble on and on and on and on and on about.
I'll let Scarlet take my spot if he wants. I don't think I actually have any, but I'd be glad to discuss with others.
Why don't you just use this time to come up with one, and then just hand us your crack headcanon like on the spot?
Yeah, I didn't say they had to be good.
It's like a science project that's just a cup of dirt.
Yeah.
I can give you one of
You should
mine
just
if you
move on
want.
now.
I mean, I would appreciate it. I can't 100% guarantee I take it, but I appreciate it either way.
Scarlet, you're up.
Well, all right. I might as well just go with the obvious one since I added some images to the slideshow. I might as well explain what they're about because they're probably flashing by your eyes at some point. So the images I selected for the slideshow are related to the Scarlet Files, which is kind of my MLP analysis review series that I've started on my YouTube channel. If you haven't checked them out, feel free to do so. They're pretty funny and pretty fun, and sometimes they get a little crazy. And the images that I have up are from the first episode. Where Scarlet suffered from some analysis paralysis from deep diving into how the solar system of Equestria is set up scientifically and theoretically, in the sense that, well, okay, is it heliocentric or geocentric or something else? And that came from the fact that in show canon, we're told that Celestia and Luna, they control the sun and moon, but then, of course, the Storm King comes along in the movie and just sort of messes a whole bunch of stuff up. And we're like, okay. And I was like, okay, well, hold up. If the Storm King's sticking out the Staff of Secanus and waving it around and moving the sun and moon all over the place, what does that look like on the other side of the globe? Because we know that Equestria is basically just like its own continent or country of sorts. What if you're on the other side of that planet? Like, what does that look like to you? Does that totally throw off your seasonal cycles or your day and night cycles? Like what would you do? So the basic gist of how people viewed our solar system in the early days was geocentric, where the Earth was at the center of the solar system and the sun, stars, planets, everything revolved around that. And then later, as more scientific discoveries were made, we switched to a heliocentric view where the sun is at the center and the planets and stars and all that and everything moves relative to that. But the challenge with going with a heliocentric view in Equestria is that if the magic is used incorrectly and it moves the sun and the moon all at different times, and heck, there was even a scene where the moon and the sun were up at the same time, and one half of the Catch-A-Lot was like in night, and the other half was in day. Of course, that was Discord. Discord could break all the rules anyway, but it's just like, oh my gosh, this is a whole minefield to approach with overanalyzing everything. And so I just sort of ran with it and had a bunch of fun. And the final image in that slideshow was Scarlet going off the rails, saying, okay, what if Equestria is really under a giant dome, and the princesses just project the stars, sun, and moon onto it, so that ponies believe that they're in a typical day-night cycle. And so, basically, when someone takes over the magic and it's just a glitch in the system, and someone's just, throwing the astral phenomenons all out of whack, and that way it doesn't affect the rest of the planet itself, and they can still have their normal cycles. But then, there is a problem with that. What if the Pegasi fly up too high? Do they hit this dome at any point? Or is there like a certain height limit with which they can't breathe anymore? And it's really fun. You should check it out.
So that's an interesting one. There are two really good fanfics that play with those ideas. If y'all want to read them, there's Arrow 18 Mission Logs, Lone Ranger, and that one, if I remember correctly, the dude spent like an entire year like coming up with the sci-fi workings of the sorry, I don't remember what the Equestria-centric version is called. But but like it is in the show where the sun orbits the planet,
Mhm.
and then
Geocentric.
similar, the geocentric, right? And then it's funny because I think there's like laws enacted to like not hurt Celestia, because if they hurt her, then like the whole place could get destroyed. But anywho,
Makes sense.
and then like Astraeo is an interesting one, and in it the whole planet isn't even a planet; it's a piece of a ring, and it's just like one third or 1/4 of a ring, and so it's curved, but the sun and the moon are basically just magic balls of energy that the Alicorns created in order to bring light to this dark plane, and then bring life to
Ooh.
it. Like
That's
that was a
interesting.
really interesting one.
Yeah.
And of course that would make it where like Princess Luna could like paint the night sky with stars, because
Mhm.
it's literally their magic that's doing that, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so those are some interesting executions of those theories, in my opinion.
That's cool. I'm gonna have to check those out.
Whichever
I
one
like
I really
that.
believe in,
That's
I don't.
actually cool.
Whichever one I believe in, I personally like it. It would have to do with like what do I want to do with the universe? Because like say for
Right.
dimensional shift,
Mhm.
dimensional shift, I still have to think about how that works, because it's a lot more grounded traditional sci-fi of it actually works off of logical science,
Right.
and
Physics supplies.
geocentric, yeah, geocentric does not. And so I've thought, okay, is it like their planet no longer has a star because they harvested it,
Ooh.
and so instead they have like this portal, like this gate that's just rotating around the planet, that has
Huh.
another star on the other side that's giving light to it? Like, is that how it works, or something like that?
Oh,
And so they
that's a
can
cool idea
position
too.
the gate where they want it to go, like
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
that.
So
That's neat.
before I start blabbing, does anybody else have something that they would like to add on Scarlet's?
I mean, this is one of the ones that's really, especially if you're someone who also writes, one of the ones that can be flexible, where it's like you don't have one that you specifically like the most, but you can absolutely integrate elements of different theories in order to give yourself a little flavor.
True.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like, I feel like a fun combination could happen. Like, maybe it is in a dome, but also that dome has gateways in it.
Ooh.
Like, why not? Like, you can
True.
imagine that the world is like a disc and then there's like a layer over the top. Maybe it's like a piece of paper. Maybe the sky is made of birds that only Celestia can talk
Oh,
to.
gosh.
Equestria's flat. No.
Yeah, maybe the sky is just birds, guys.
Colored bioluminescent birds.
Anybody else?
Yeah, you just Celestia like psychically communicates with the white birds.
But yeah,
Uh,
I agree that like all manners of like explaining how the sun and moon work in Equestria, like it's hard to find like a favorite because there's so many different things that explain it. Like I've also heard one of like it's a more or less normal planet, but it stopped spinning, and all the sisters are doing is just rotating it with their magic.
That's another theory I considered.
So look, we can control the sun now. Worship us.
See, that's the one that I considered. That's the one that I considered for like the whole the war of Cybertron thing. That like they ended up stopping the planet rotation intentionally to like make it such a harsh environment that the Cybertronians couldn't survive on there. But yeah, I don't know. Self-sabotage.
That kind of
That's a fanfic.
environment would be very deadly to any kind of life, though, because then you'd have to have temperatures that would melt metal.
This is what you got magic for.
That's the idea.
But anybody else got anything they want to share before I say?
That's why they needed the dome.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Oh, okay.
So
We're watching a new theory be born.
Indeed.
So I subscribe more to the idea of the geo-centric universe, except I view it as the world that they live on is either technically dead or dying because it has no weather patterns of its own outside of like the like odd storm caused by magic. It doesn't seem to like they don't have seasons. The seasons are put in place by the Pegasus, and so a world that doesn't move, that's got a small enough star that it's feasible that they can move it. It makes a lot of sense, and that would also explain that why the temperature doesn't massively fluctuate. So essentially, they have to move the celestial bodies over the habitable portion. So there's an entire possibility, because we never get to see the vast majority of the world, that there's just an entire half of the world that is uninhabitable.
Yeah, and like to add to that, what I've always wondered, like, right, is so when Celestia, say, moves the sun, is she having to consciously move it the entire time? Or like in that one where she trades places with Luna, she's like, okay, moon raised, and then that's it, and it just kind of does its own thing until it gets to the other side, and then it has to be lowered. Like,
So I kind of addressed that in that first Scarlet Files episode also, actually. Basically, one of the theories that I came up with, and hence Scarlet explained in the episode, was that perhaps what happens is they just sort of there's a point in the orbits where it just sort of decays and stops, and so all Celestia and Luna are doing are just sort of pushing it along to keep it going.
Oh no, I just thought of an insane theory that's so stupid.
Uh-oh.
say it.
Oh boy.
What
is it?
if, hear me out, the Earth, like in this universe, is flat, but there's a tunnel underneath the Earth from one side of it to the other. So whenever the sun is like not raised, it is under the Earth traveling through the tunnel, and Celestia has to get it up and then back
That is
down.
scary.
And then the reason why you can have both the moon and the sun up and down at the same time is because the moon has a separate tunnel that's right next to it, and that's why the sun always rises from the same side, even though she pulls it to the other side of the Earth. It's because it's going through the tunnel when it's nighttime.
So
Well, that brings a whole new definition to quantum tunneling, I guess.
I'll
The way
accept
that
it, but only if
Go ahead, Nameless.
the way that I was thinking about it with what I threw up was the idea that it does drift, because it's got nothing to really stop it in space, or it's either that, because I don't remember if there's anywhere in the show where they actually show the sun moving across the sky, or they could literally just be going like, oh, it's in the light spot. And that
You
spot could be just
technically see
random.
it moving across the sky in less than 0, but it's like moving in like ticks.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah.
so to kind of add to that, what if like the planet that they're on is more like a super Earth, and that's why like the Pegasi can't fly without magic, because they're really heavy and they get like pulled down.
Well,
and so then like it's just a tiny neutron star, and the star actually orbits the planet.
That was another thing that I was kind of thinking of, is like a supermassive planet that has its own gravitational orbit. But the only issue I could see with that is that there's still like it can't have a full orbit, or otherwise it would cause an ice age, which would make sense.
Yeah, that's...
I don't know, guys. I think the tunnel thing works out. The
Well,
will warm up the volcanoes.
Well, if you
Well,
think about
the
it,
Ice Age thing, though, maybe that's why the frozen north is always frozen.
well, what I was
Go ahead,
Oh,
Teo.
actually, I have a thing about the frozen north where I had a theory that part of how, like, weather patterns started happening the way they did was because they started working with the Earth ponies and needed a wider swath of land to be free. The Pegasi started all flying in the same directions to create a weather pattern and make it easier for like things to go a certain way, and they pushed all the cold air in the same direction. So it ended up trapped in the north, and because they like circled around basically and made like a jet stream kind of deal, it ended up being like a self-sustaining wind, and it keeps pushing the air up.
Well, the way that
Hey,
I would
you're-
look at it, if it's a supermassive planet where it could potentially take decades for a tiny neutron star to orbit, why would you not have the Alicorns then just grab the celestial bodies, and keep them over the habitable zone?
Well, so for a okay, I don't think you'd be able to survive on a supermassive planet that it would take a tiny star decades to go around.
It depends on the size.
So if you have a tiny star, right, that doesn't put off much light, but they have to bring it closer to the planet, it's going to rotate faster around it. But they'd probably still have to keep it. No, they'd have to keep it at that velocity so it doesn't crash into the planet. So,
Technically, though,
Maybe that's how Fallout Equestria really started.
the celestial bodies are shown to like not move by themselves, really. So it may be that they do move it and then like place it there, but because it's no longer moving, it doesn't continue in orbit anymore.
I don't know. That'd be interesting. Now, KOcraft has been trying to say something for the last millennium. KO, say your thing, unless you've forgotten it.
No, I remember because
say
it's really
something.
short.
I'm giving up on you.
So, I just want to add on to Rarity's thing. Can we call it the Sunnel?
Please, yeah. Thank you for being a genius.
The Sunnel,
That is all. Thank you.
That being said,
Sunnel theory. The Sunnel
Rarity,
theory of the universe.
Rarity, it is your turn.
Oh, my trans Applejack thing. All right. Now we know that there's an out-of-universe reason why Ashley changed Applejack's voice. She thought it was too much like Rainbow Dash, and it was too high up, and it was annoying, and she needed to differentiate the characters, and then she settled into like a lower voice for Applejack. Thing is,
There was a change. I didn't know there was a change.
There was.
In season
subtle.
1,
It's subtle. It's subtle.
It's not
but
subtle.
Once you know it, you can hear it.
It's not
It's
subtle.
not subtle at all. In the first season, her voice is so high up, and like there's certain lines, like in if you're not paying attention to the video in Winter Wrap Up, there's a part where Applejack gets cut off by Rainbow Dash, and you would not have understood. You would not have heard it. Like they sound basically the same sometimes when they sing. But Applejack's voice goes from real high up and sounding a lot like Rainbow Dash to deepening significantly and like becoming kind of its own thing. But the main characters are pretty much implied to be basically adults or have mostly gone through like puberty at this point. So
I mean, they all have. I mean, like the vast majority of them have businesses.
I'm pointing that out because if Applejack's voice, for an in-universe reason, suddenly drops, what are the reasons we can explain that? If she's already gone through puberty.
Menopause.
Well, we got it. It's all about hormones. So either she was on puberty blockers for some reason, and then stopped it, and then her voice deepened because she finally had puberty, which generally you don't have unless you have like a medical condition or you were like a trans kid or trying to like figure out what you had going on.
Well, now hold on a second. Doesn't like child labor and working really early, like doing a lot of work really early as a child, like cause developmental stunts?
It might, but they're also the people with the best access to food. They're growing the food.
I do remember hearing
my question for that one.
But I'm not done yet. There's also the possibility that her voice deepened because she went on tea. And then there's the theory that I have that she Now, there's a short that shows up way later, and you don't have to count it as canon because it's like a weird little thing where it turns out Applejack's making all sorts of voices. So she can sound like a very like pretty princess. She can sound like a Viking warlord. Turns out Applejack's a voice actor. So I had a thought that maybe she was modeling her voice after Rainbow Dash, her only like butch friend who she felt was a lot like her and who like people like always like recognized as a girl, and was like, I could sound like that and that would like make me feel better. So she was trying to sound like Rainbow Dash, and then eventually like got more comfortable with herself and her friends and the way of things, and like her voice eventually got deeper just because she stopped masking. And her reason for her Manhattan trip when she was a kid was, I thought I tried being a socialite, and I don't know where a kid would get the idea that that's a fun thing to do. I'm not sure if some cousin said that, oh, they go to a lot of parties, and she really thought it was like a Pinkie Pie party and not the snotty kind, or if she was friends with Rarity at the time, which we're not really sure of because they never gave us that, and like Rarity made it sound like a big deal and she did it to impress her, or if it's a cover-up because they were trying to do that thing that people used to do where your Aunt Tess would go away for a while and then 6 years later you'd go and meet your like Uncle Terry. So was it like a childhood attempt at doing that got aborted because Applejack got too homesick? Like, because they were specifically trying to teach her how to be a young lady while she was there. They were like sticking her in dresses and teaching her table manners and doing her hair up all pretty. And she wasn't happy that way because it wasn't the like version of femininity that like felt right to her. Like, she just wanted to go home and be herself and keep her name, but like just be seen a different way. Possibly. There's like more to the theory for me that I could like potentially use. I think I have it written down somewhere. But like it also plays a lot into her themes of being true to yourself and of like your integrity, and it's like feeling what's right and like stating it. And I think that's a theme that like they tend to be concerned with, like when you're working through issues like that, especially when everybody's telling you you're wrong. So it's like one of those things that like feels thematically interesting for her, and I understand people not agreeing with me or not liking it. And like I'm sure people would point out that she had like barrettes in her hair when she was a baby, but they were also like she has the like she introduces herself as Applejack, which again her name's gender neutral, so she might have just not changed it. She like especially old-timey people would be pretty like unisex when it comes to babies and small children, and like the apples are implied to be pretty traditional, so for all we know Big Mac wore a dress until he was 4. Like I don't know, it's just a thing that like sits well for me, and I understand not everybody would agree with it, and I understand that there are other reasons for some of the thoughts, but I do think I wanted to be a socialite is the weirdest possible reason to get Applejack to Manhattan when she was like 8. I'm not sure most like 8-year-olds even know what a socialite is.
So I actually have some comments and questions for this one if you're ready for that part.
Go for it.
So first thing, we're kind of shown in the show that it is at most mid-industrial revolution in technology level. So I'm not entirely sure that the medications for puberty blockers would necessarily be, one, easily enough available for someone living in Ponyville, or two, there's also the issue that that's also the era that they thought licking radium was still a good idea.
Oh, true.
I'm going to point out to you that a lot of medications and pharmaceuticals are herbally derived. So it's very possible that in Equestria there are magical or slightly different properties of plants, and that if you mash a certain amount of them together, it has the effect of a puberty blocker. or of estrogen or of testosterone.
Also,
I will note that there were like during the whole Twilight versus Trixie battle that I know that it was a joke that like the whole gender not a joke, but it was a fake out the whole gender swap thing. But the fact that they even mentioned that spell existing and they just faked it instead of doing the legit thing because she wasn't powerful enough means that it probably does exist.
Well, I was actually
Well,
going to
it's
lead
one that does
in.
exist, but there's also the idea that some might not actually biologically transition all the way. Like a lot of trans people choose not to get a bottom surgery or whatever. It's also possible that they do it in increments where instead of doing a full body swap, they'll like magically adjust their face to be more feminine. Or they might like make slight adjustments so it's not something that would be super obvious, but everybody's got a template body, so we're not gonna see it.
it's funny that you bring up like their tech levels nameless because like only a couple weeks ago I watched a video of someone trying to figure out like where in the timeline Equestria is, and they used the fact that Twilight has like on some of her science machines has blue LEDs, and blue LEDs were not able to be invented until like the 70s.
I mean, it's kind of like a mixed bag. Like they have very modern equipment for like entertainment and very, very far back equipment for transport. And I think part of it is literally just because they're horses, they can already go like 40 miles per hour if they need to.
Well,
so it's not something that felt as necessary to them as having fun.
And also they have magic, so it's not like they need all the obvious infrastructure that we do.
Magic
and they
tech
clearly
is...
sorry.
I was just going to say, magic tech is something that would leap them forward, leaps and bounds in certain areas where we took a lot longer because we don't have magic.
Mm-hmm. And they clearly have electricity. Like Twilight's power goes out in the sleepover episode.
They've got zeppelins and airships. And I know that in season 1 they showed ponies pulling the train, but later seasons showed trains being able to run without ponies pulling them.
There's a lot of things in season 1 that I'm just like, oh, that's just season 1 weirdness.
I will say that
Steam in that specific instance, the engine was out and they had to keep the schedule.
I will say with the steam locomotives, they did show up before the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, but we also they started switching to.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. They started switching to these like crystal things for lights after a while because I think there was like concerns about the fact they had open flames, so like Hasbro made them switch or something. But because they have like these little magic glow crystals and things everywhere, I wouldn't be surprised if like some of their technology was based on like magic power crystals or something instead, and you don't need a steam engine or a coal engine or a combustion engine. You just need to put the like crystals in the right place and let it go.
Yeah.
Well, that could also imply radiation, like nuclear power, because a lot of nuclear materials are like most commonly found in crystal forms.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if they'd be using it to light their houses without incident. I think the apples would have radiation poisoning.
It depends on like how much in
these characters are.
And like how their immunity to radiation, because they live in a world that has fluctuating levels of magic. If that doesn't act of some sort of radiation in some way that would affect them, that does seem a bit disingenuous. But the other thing that I was going to bring up is that the socialite thing, that's actually something that was, to my knowledge, with the history that I've studied and the literature I've read, that it was actually something that was seen as very desirable to become like high society, and the specific type of stuff that they were putting Applejack through. Applejack was a little kid that was like, oh, that's where all the cool people end up, is like in the big cities. outside of the country.
I'm sure that's a thing that a lot of kids would think, but I'm also thinking about Applejack's local culture. And I'm also thinking about the fact that, like, while we do talk about how the apples are traditional and how a lot of things in this universe are based on, like, figments of the past, a lot of their social, like, habits are still pretty modern. Like, they're still relatable to a young audience. So it's not like we can say that their culture is basically exactly like 1930s, where being a socialite's this big deal. Like, I
Well,
genuinely...
even nowadays, like, people will get all kinds of excited at the idea of living in New York for some reason.
Mhm.
Even though, like, if you talk to a New Yorker, they will tell you, don't live in New York.
Yeah.
My cousin lives in New York, and he does not like it.
But, like, there's this fantasy of living, apparently, I knew somebody that I was close to for a little while that was obsessed with the idea of living in a teeny tiny apartment in New York. Specifically, a teeny tiny apartment. And it was just like...
What kind of person are they, though?
A person I don't want to think too much more about. Well, I'm going to leave it at that.
What I'm saying is, if we say that, like, Applejack did change over the course of her childhood, obviously, but clearly, since she was a kid, there have been some traits of hers that kind of stuck out. And even if she waffled on how proud she was of being part of her family or how much she wanted to work on the farm, thinking about her characteristics and the kind of things she enjoys, what part of fancy being in a city living feels like it would be something that would appeal to her specifically? Like, if she was a kid who loves roughing around in the mud and then she hears from her cousins in Manhattan that they have to wash their hands every day, their hooves rather, every day, do you think that's going to appeal to her?
It depends, because that's kind of more of on an individual by individual basis.
And that's what Applejack is. Like, I'm kind of the only people who have brought up a headcanon that's specific to a character. So bringing it into a societal level, I understand being a socialite is a thing that a lot of people consider desirable. I'm sure Rarity found it desirable and would talk about it, and that's why she was brought up as one of the reasons Applejack may have done it. But we also don't know if Applejack and Rarity were friends at this time. And because they had a rough start at the beginning of this series, it's hard to tell whether or not they were childhood friends as well. So, and the relationship to Rarity is not a given as a reason why she would think being a socialite is cool. But I can't think of a kid at the age of 8 whose first thought what do you want to be when you grow up is socialite, when so many kids are going to say, like...
It'll depend on, like, how she looks up to the family members that introduced this idea.
True.
I don't remember... I don't remember what their relationship was, because it's been a while since I've seen that episode. But I do remember that, once she got there, she realized that, like, this is way more than I want to deal with. I don't want to stand here wearing... Because Applejack's never been the dress-wearing type.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that you learn about socialites first. Like, her Aunt Orange, if she goes to these family reunions, she's going to show up in a dress. Like, she knows that Aunt Orange is a socialite. Why would that appeal to her as a little tomboy?
If I could offer a strangely unique perspective here, it's possible. This is kind of stretching a bit, but it's possible that perhaps she felt like some autistic individuals do, in which they have to conform to these specific rules and mask in order to be well liked.
So I'm gonna say no to that, because I just watched the scene, and she specifically says that she didn't want to be part of a muddy old farm and wanted to live the sophisticated life with her aunt and Uncle Orange.
And if you don't know what goes...
When she says that, like, the way she said it to me sounded like it was rehearsed. And maybe that's, like, a tonal interpretation thing, but, like, it kind of just sounds like the sort of thing that probably wouldn't, like, appeal to her as a kid. I'm sure that she didn't lie, but...
With the way that I look at it, though, is, like, kids, like, because my dad was a mechanic, I thought I wanted to be a mechanic for the longest time until I realized how much work it is to actually be a mechanic. Because I got
wanted
to
to be
go.
a storm tracer.
I got to go with my dad and like see what he actually did, and then I realized, holy shit, this is a lot of work. I don't want to do this. So if you
Don't worry,
only
a lot of kids
Well,
go
then
through
wouldn't
that.
the people that who she looks up to most be her parents, and she would have automatically wanted to be a farmer?
well, the idea though with the kind of story that was being told with this episode was that she suddenly was seeing this less often. Well, I don't remember. Is it acknowledged that they regularly visit, or is it a suddenly they show up all fancy dresses and prim and proper and looking all?
I mean, if
It
they do
never
show
says
up,
anything about that.
no, if they show up, it's going to be like at the
Yeah.
family reunions where it says, "Up, everybody's coming."
Yeah, so
And we
scarcity.
didn't actually see Aunt and Uncle Orange, I don't think, at the family reunion where supposedly everybody came. So I don't know how they dressed to it, but
Perhaps
based
they're more
on what we
distant
little we know,
relatives in that respect.
yeah, maybe they weren't invited because they're technically oranges. Who knows?
Yeah, but
At that
there's some
point-
reason that she idolized them, and then that idea was just broken apart. You know.
At
Yeah,
the
well,
point
I have
actually
to bring
seen-
Verity as a possibility because she's the
I-
only person in that town who has any interest in fancy.
I actually
I-
have read a couple fan fictions on why Applejack. A couple of different reasons why Applejack moved back to the farm rather than stay with her aunt and uncle.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
Are
different
these
reasons,
creepypastas?
and I understand people who don't agree with me. I understand why people ill accept that story at face value. But when I put it together with other things like the voice drop, it's one of those things that to me feels like it has that reminiscence of having pulled somebody away and like planning to reintroduce them later as like a whole new person, give them a makeover.
It's certainly an interesting theory.
I
Hey,
think
what were you saying, Nameless?
I think that we have had enough time trying to jab holes in. Well, I may be the only one trying to jab holes, but jab holes in.
No, you're not.
Maybe just a little bit.
That's a joke.
You're not.
Go ahead and let Nashi go now.
All right, so
The next victim.
Don't worry, I will be equally as willing to jab holes in anybody's theory. But go
What is
ahead,
this,
Nashi.
a Shark Tank or something?
I mean, I'm fine going into the Shark Tank. One of my other main OCs is a shark pony, so there you go. But
Oh, I see.
Let's go.
anyways, so my theory that the Tree of Harmony got itself killed on purpose in the season 9 opener. So we see like clearly throughout mostly throughout season 8 and 9, but we clearly see that like the Tree of Harmony is sentient. It can even make an avatar for itself in the form of like the shiny Twighost. And it's able to speak and communicate. And this kind of jumps off on another theory that came from earlier in the show, from like season 4-ish, that the Tree of Harmony is like kind of in control of what the wielders of the elements like what effect their Rainbow Blast has, because like when Celestia used it to fight Nightmare Moon, she banished Nightmare Moon to the moon for 1,000 years. But when Twy and her friends used them, she was purified instead of it having like a similar effect. And then like we have like Discord where he gets turned to stone, and just all these inconsistent effects. And so this theory comes from the main 6 blasted Sombra with the elements in the opener, but he's magically able to come back on his own somehow and find the Cave of Harmony to destroy the tree.
I don't
Like,
think he did that on his own, did he?
So
If I remember
like,
correctly,
yeah.
it was Discord that brought him back.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Discord brought them all back.
No, not in like the initial revival. But I mean, like after, like during the same episode, they blast him, thinks he's gone, and then he just, as they're putting the elements back into the tree, he comes back in the Cave of Harmony and just destroys the tree, despite having just been ass blasted by the elements.
Oh,
So-
kind of
okay. I see what
kind
you
of a
mean now.
side note,
So,
what
yeah.
irks me is the inconsistency of, is it the crystals that have the power, or is it the bearers that have the
Well,
power?
that
Like,
actually, so
True.
that is actually, I'm actually going to be covering that too. So, like, since the tree has like an effect of like what it, like the magic that's done in its name is like able to have, like I think it specifically pulled Sombra to it, knowing that Sombra would destroy it, in order to destroy the elements, because it saw that Ponydom had become like too fixated on the elements as like as items.
They were
And
like
so-
too dependent on them.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so it wanted to get itself and the elements destroyed in order to teach the ponies the lesson that it literally is their friendships that create the magic, not these magical baubles.
and that would actually make sense for the season 4 premiere, because like the whole thing was, oh, the tree's sick and we have to put the elements of harmony back into it. But wait,
True.
what are we how are we going to protect ourselves? Oh right, we are the elements of harmony, not the little crystal things. You know, we have the power. Yeah, that
And-
they have to keep relearning that lesson.
Yeah, and like
yeah.
because
And then
like
the tree
there's multiple times where they took the elements out of the tree to use them to put them back, and the tree was probably fed up with this and it's just like, okay, screw it,
Well,
I'm
that's
doing
what just on the
I'm
eggs.
doing the one
I-
thing that'll teach you
Come on,
this
dude.
lesson permanently.
I'm gonna be
I don't wanna do this
entirely
for more,
honest, Nashi. I thought this was just canon.
That's
Yeah, it's
I
never
have a hot take
it's
about
never
this.
outright stated in the show.
Well, that's
So-
why it's fan theory. This is more theory
Yeah.
than
yeah.
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 I mean,
can I
It
point out-
makes sense though.
Go ahead.
it does.
Go
Yeah.
ahead,
I have, like,
Rarity.
Okay, I have like a little side theory that's related to this, where I genuinely think that like all magic in Equestria has some level of sentience or at least empathy, and that the tree of harmony was basically like a condensation of it that was like more intelligent than most.
Okay.
Yeah,
Related to
like-
that,
Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead, Rarity.
Oh, well, it's kind of like whenever equestrian magic seeps into Equestria girls, it seems to always go for somebody who's going through it emotionally, or
Mm.
like who's like in the moment, like experiencing like a strong emotional bond with like their friends or something. So you'll have like elements of harmony style magic where it's like, ah, yes, I see you, I am drawn to your love, or like, oh man, your brain is a storm inside, like what's going on in there? Like, I feel like part of why, like, Starlight would be somebody who would be as powerful as she is just because she bottles up her feelings so much that, like,
Mm.
magical, like, empathy things are like, oh, their feelings, oh my god. And then she just zooms. Like, that's why she's so powerful she can't control it. She's messed up.
Well, given that she
That's
once
a joke.
blasted Discord into oblivion, I believe that.
Yeah, like,
That was
yeah, but what
super
I'm
cool.
saying is, like, it seems to be a trait of the magic of the universe that they respond in some way to emotion, and they're drawn to, like, certain things. Like, even if you don't have, like, unicorn magic, I think unicorn magic, it's like the horn is kind of like a little beacon, and it will summon more magic, but
So
healing word magic is
the word
thing
you're
that-
looking for is focus. It's a
Well,
focus.
I'm saying it's a beacon because like it summons the magic. Like it's coming from places out in the environment of Equestria.
In most settings that use focuses, that is a lot of what it does. It also is used to channel magic through.
Yes, but are we saying that it's being lured because it has a sentience? Because that's what I'm saying.
And well, interesting that you bring that up though, because like I don't remember where I read it exactly, but I feel like I remember reading something about like Lauren Faust's original vision for the show of like this sentient sort of magical being with magic representing like literal harmony. I don't remember where I saw that, but
Yeah, well,
that's kind of
think
related to this.
yeah, but you know how like sometimes like dark energy will literally become like a magic entity? Like
Mhm.
it happens time and time again with like the Pony of Shadows and like
Right.
whatever nightmare thing is going on. It's basically just like a concentration of like bad vibes and bad feelings. It's kind of
So
like
yeah,
the magic itself transforms and becomes a sentient creature like after it's had like its empathy has like kind of just molded into enough of a shape. So it's
so
kind of like the inverse of the Tree of Harmony being like a
Right.
concentration that became so strong gave the ability to think.
Okay, what were you saying, Nash?
It's funny that you bring up the nightmare because we actually do get into the comics that yes, the nightmare is actually like a sentient magic being that
Yeah.
latches onto
Quit trying
ponies
to get
or
me to talk about what I was going to talk about. Damn it!
and like takes their negative emotions and uses them to like power them up and like guess supposed to feed on them because like we have an entire comic arc where Rarity goes nightmare because she is feeling extremely jealous.
Yeah, I voiced that comic before. I know about it. I
Mixed
but
feelings about that comic.
yeah, but what I'm saying is creatures like that existing and the Tree of Harmony existing would be consistent with essentially like the idea that magic itself in Equestria is like an environmental force that responds to feelings and can be transformed by them. That's all I'm saying.
So what does that mean if a pony feels nothing? Do they just have no magic whatsoever?
So
I think
I'm
there'd still be like environmental magic.
They turn
around
into
them.
mod. But even
I'm
mod has
a-
magic.
Oh, jeez.
I'm gonna actually say a little bit that's gonna feed into what I'm gonna talk about for like when we get to my turn. But I somewhat agree with Rarity, though I don't go with like full sentience. All magic that I
Well,
like.
I don't say it's all sentient. I'm saying it's all empathic.
Well, the idea that I go with is that the magic of Equestria is emotionally based in meaning that someone that is either emotionally loud or very like tends to be more in control of their emotions for good or bad. Those are the two that will the latter will be skilled, the other will be powerful. Because if you remember, Starlight's not very in control of her emotions. She just kind of like she often either resorts to just doing whatever she wants to, or literally using outside sources to bottle up her own emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So it explains the sheer amount of power she has, whereas she is initially not as skilled as, say, Twilight, who has had more time to like work with her, like her skill level. Before
Where did that put Sunburst?
He controls his emotions more to hide his emotions. So he's got the skill, but like he's not exactly a loud emotional person. So that's why he doesn't have the power. It
He
works
doesn't really
off of
burst with much sun, huh?
the
Really,
theory
no.
that I have for this works off of the idea of the personality of the pony shapes their ability.
It's actually to talk about like the emotional magic actually does remind me of another thing that's been touched upon in different like videos I've watched or things I've read, where like sorry, my ADHD made me lose track of my thought for a second there. Where emotion, like magic is emotionally charged. Like we know, like love magic is the strongest magic, but it's still love. And then you have Sombra, whose magic is clearly fueled off of fear, but specifically the fear of others. And then the thing that reminded me of this was the Starlight literally bottling up her anger. So like magic via anger also exists as well.
And I actually have something that I'll touch in when it gets to my turn in relation to that. But I also, with unicorns, the reason that they can channel it to do telekinesis, teleportation, and other spells is because their horn gives them a focus to channel it through. And because of that, they also tend to be more prone to the abilities of it. And you'll also notice that, like, the best flyers, always very loud, emotionally, like, brash types.
Rainbow, lightning dust, Spitfire.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
I had
Kind of like
another
Scarlet too. She has some loud emotional crashes too.
What were you saying, Rarity? What were you saying?
Sorry, when it was coming to the emotional, magical sentience thing, part of the thought I had with unicorns is why they like go to the spell, and why some skill is important is that how well you know the spell and how well you know what you're doing is how well you can give them instructions. Like the idea is almost they want to help you in my version, and the reason why magic will or won't work is because you're giving them instructions that don't quite work when they're trying to help you with your thought. Is all.
I could see
therapy
that.
sessions must be explosive from time to time.
I could definitely see that because most of the time, magic, the energy that it makes it up is referred to as the weave. So it's like trying to thread the pattern that you're wanting to make the spell that you want, but you don't know what the pattern is because you're busy trying to make conflicting patterns.
Yeah, versus when you're emotionally like motivated, where you just want a thing, and it just kind of works because you're not thinking too hard about it, and it's like, I think I know what you want.
Or if with the ones with the emotional control, they are able to clear their heads enough for whatever reason to be able to give clear, concise patterns or commands or however.
I can see that.
With tying this back into with what Nashi brought up originally, though, the elements of harmony themselves are just like their focuses on steroids is the way that I looked at it. They're like super powerful because they can channel so much of it for literally any type of pony, so long as each one has like is being used properly. And I believe that when Celestia used it, the brute force was just the sheer emotional state that she was in, and the fact that she's an Alicorn was the only reason she was able to use it at that point, and that she would not have been able to do it again because she wouldn't have been able to bring herself to do it again. She
I also think that she personally, I think that because I feel like they were both. Well, we know that they were bearers of harmony, if I remember correctly, in the past, right? Celestia and Luna.
Yeah.
When they fought against each other, they weren't harmonious anymore. They broke that harmony, so they weren't able to use the elements of harmony anymore. So she spent the next 1,000 years trying to find the next bearers of the elements of harmony because she knew that Nightmare Moon was going to be back, and that was the only thing that could stop her.
But yeah, like because of the way that I analyze fantasy, I just thought that was canon.
I kind of agree with that. Yeah, like I think I just assumed that when I had seen that episode.
Because like the trees of harmony, like even the ones further in are shown to have more than just baseline sentience, and the one that gets the most activity, the one that we're familiar with from the show, the more power gets pumped through it, the more it begins to evolve. And then eventually, when you get to a point where you have, we'll say, human-like intelligence, and you have to watch the same mistake happen over and over, at some point you're gonna just go, fuck it, I'll do it myself. And then
Right, yeah.
take away all the toys.
Yeah. And just to add on like a little comment further, that another thing that I've thought about for this specific theory is like the Tree of Harmony clearly is able to predict the future. Like you have Twilight's cutie mark as well as the sisters on its trunk, though they had obviously had nothing to do with this planting. That was the pillars. So like it grew knowing who would eventually take its elements, so it can clearly see the future. And
Or
it probably saw it dying was led to the most positive outcome for the world.
I mean, did it predict Twilight's cutie mark, or was that symbol the basis of Twilight's cutie mark? Like her destiny was tied to it because that mark was already there.
I kind of agree with Rarity, actually, with that one.
That fair.
There's a lot of destiny-based magic that happens with cutie marks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's then left up to the interpretation of the bearer of the cutie mark to understand what it actually means.
Right. Yeah.
Which is where the CMC and Treble Shoes come in, where they're talking about that, trying to show them that.
Yeah, that's true.
I do genuinely enjoy the function of cutie mark magic and like its role in the show. Like it's kind of like a nebulous thing where you like part of the thing that makes it cool is that it's not completely uniform.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I really appreciate how personalized cutie mark magic is and how basically every pony has it. And to an extent, I honestly think other species may have it to some degree. It's just not going to present as a cutie mark. It just has a different presentation.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And are definitely one of the more unique aspects of My Little Pony, I'd say.
Yeah. Speaking of that, like one thing I always really liked about the cutie mark magic is like it overwrites like all other magic too. Like how like a cutie mark can't be changed. It will like it can't be forced early by other magic. It'll come when it comes. And like that also I think also adds in another layer of like the magic in and of itself is sentient that we were talking about before.
Oh god, I just thought of something so dumb.
What?
Remember the episode where it turns out main magic is tricky?
Oh yeah,
what if your main is controlled by cutie mark magic?
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't have to be, but it could be funny.
I've just always assumed that like one rule of magic is like it can't affect the body in any way other than maybe possibly healing. But like,
I mean, why would poison joke do a thing then? Like, isn't it?
Yeah, I was about to say
that's more like negative magic. But I also agree that I don't think that's it.
I
think I don't know. I think that was more a thing of like. Well, actually, no, that wouldn't make sense, because Twilight did that whole thing where she was able to make Spike grow a mustache. Why couldn't she just do that for Rarity?
I think maybe it wasn't actual hair. Like, it's a sort of thing where it's like she made a false mustache on his face.
Oh yeah, that could be a thing.
Maybe.
I'm gonna say this.
She's also able to make flowers and stuff grow and shrink and whatever. And all that stuff.
I'm gonna say this real quick before we move on to the next person. I do have to appreciate the storytelling that they use, where they actually do misinterpret their cutie marks on occasion, because
they're
that is good. I like
it. It is such an easy thing to, when yours is just like a vague star. What the hell is that supposed to mean?
Right.
I actually have this thing that I enjoy where like a pony will look at another pony that they've known for a while and they know their cutie mark and they know their cutie mark story, but they like will say, I think your cutie mark means this because this is like what you bring to this like story to me. Like, I think interpreting cutie marks as like a relationship, like how I see you as a person is like a thing that they didn't really do in the show, but I could have seen being like a really sweet like bonding exercise. Just saying.
Or the opposite, cause a bunch of conflict with misinterpretation.
Well, not even misinterpretation. It's like, to me, you are like this. Like, it's not necessarily you misinterpreted it, because, like, I'm not sure any cutie mark has a one correct interpretation.
Right, but it could be a case of like
before we get
the pony with the cutie mark misinterpreting.
Sorry.
Or
before we get too deep into this one, we're gonna we're gonna move on for the next person. KO, did you come up with anything?
Yes, I actually did remember one that kind of came to mind a little while ago. Basically, the reason I kind of thought of this is because I was having like this like very small little debate or argument with my friend whose character was a changeling. And then he was going through like all of these different things that he could do as a changeling, such as, you know, him turning into like an Alicorn, for example, and then having like all of these like crazy Alicorn abilities just like out of nowhere. And in my head, I'm just thinking like, you can't just easily snap to that species and then do everything that species can do, can it? So I kind of thought of the little headcanon, like, yeah, like maybe a changeling could switch to a unicorn and maybe do some like basic levitation or whatever, or maybe they could swap to a Pegasus. Well, they wouldn't really have to switch to a Pegasus to fly anyway.
I mean, they wouldn't really have to switch to a unicorn anyway, because they also have the horn already.
Yeah, they do.
Well,
I forgot about that.
I think the one example of what he's talking about is they had one that switched to either it was a Hydra or a Dragon, but I don't remember, but they could breathe fire.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah,
well, I think that might be like a biological process. I'm not sure how much of that is also mimicking their magic, or how much of it is like it's a thing that like happens because they like spark a certain like gas that they produce, and when they're in that form, they can also do it. But I can also consider that maybe they turn into that creature, but essentially at their equivalent power level. So it's like they can do things that a like Alicorn could do, but they can't get the power boost an Alicorn could. So you're basically just doing unicorn spells.
Yeah, that was kind of like my main thing. Since they aren't, I guess, they aren't like technically quote unquote like purebred unicorns or Alicorns or Pegasi or whatever. That the magic just simply isn't strong enough for them to be able to like do all that stuff.
Yeah, that's what I've always thought. Like, since when they transform into someone, someone or something, they're just a simulacrum of them. They're not like the actual thing. So I've never really seen like why like becoming some pony would be able to like magically like gain their abilities.
Yeah, I think the only way you could really fake it is to genuinely learn how to do the magic.
Yeah,
and
well,
I can tell you
kind of do all the same spells, then like it's different. But I also wonder if certain spells do or don't translate between species.
Well, it kind of also depends on how much love the changeling steals and or shares.
Yeah, because we do know from Chrysalis that made her more powerful, eating Cadence and Shining Armor's love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
honestly, that would make for like a really sick video game where you actually no, it would be kind of more so like Kirby.
So
you suck up the love, you suck up more love, and then you change into a certain creature, and then the more love you have, the more accurate and better you can mimic that creature's abilities.
Is that why like Thorax changed the way he did? Is he like the Alicorn equivalent of a changeling because everyone is like consistently giving their love to him?
That would actually make a lot of sense.
That's what I think.
I would consider
him and Chrysalis.
I would consider him like, you know, the Celestia equivalent of the changelings.
Yeah.
Not quite as powerful, but you know.
Well, he could be if enough people loved him. If every pony in Equestria and every changeling loved him,
So
he could be the most powerful
being in the world.
So what you're saying is he needs to go on a big worldwide campaign to get everyone to love him, and then he's going to overthrow Celestia.
Ooh.
What if you felt like it? I think
So-
if you wanted to kiss enough
Bum,
babies,
bum,
you could
bum.
do it.
I do have a quick thought on this. Does this mean that for changelings that if they want to be accurate in their changes, do they have to study like the biology
do
of
think-
creatures?
I do think
No.
that helps.
So
I do
one
think they
thing,
do.
Yeah.
I've always like, this is a personal headcanon for me for changelings, is it's a surface level thing mostly.
Yeah.
Like if you were to if a changeling would transform and say they would get an injury, even though they're still transformed, I think they would still leak bug juice rather than bleed normal blood, kind of thing.
Leak bug juice.
Um,
Beautiful.
So I also I had to do homebrew changelings as part of one of my campaigns, and as part of a solution rather than like a headcanon, well, the way that I used them was that they could change into things of appropriate sizes and either like one size category above or below what they already were, and they had to know something about it, and it couldn't be something that could they couldn't transform into a god.
Yeah.
Because none of that. One, that's incredibly broken, but two,
That'd just be
it
bull
also at that point, how did Chrysalis lose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
She
then
didn't
at the
know what
same
any gods
time,
looked like.
but then at the same time, you have Ocellus transforming into a bugbear. So that's
Well, if you take away the size portion of it and think about it, like Cadence is an alicorn, so it might have been that Chrysalis is the only one that could have transformed and pretended to be her, because she's the only one powerful enough to impersonate an alicorn, at least reliably.
Yeah, I think there might also be I think anyone could look like anyone. It's like mimicking the magic. So if you put her in situations where she doesn't have to use magic, or she only uses mid-level spells, then you could still get away with it.
that's true.
Mhm.
Perhaps that's
Yeah.
what Ocellus was doing then. She was
my
just
original
mimicking. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. My original theory is they can look like basically whatever, but it was more so mimicking like the actual magic side of everything.
Mhm.
Like for example, if a regular changeling happened to morph themselves to look like Celestia, they couldn't just control the sun all of a sudden.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to add to that, KO? Because you've had a little bit less time, but it did feel like it was coming to a close.
Yeah, this is pretty much it. I'm just happy I actually thought of something.
I'm proud of you.
Congratulations.
You
It
contributed.
was out of spite.
Venture, your turn.
I can't.
Oh boy,
Sometimes
my
spite can
turn.
make the most glorious things happen.
All right, so my headcanon is one that's been said already. Well, not in this podcast, but it's one in the fandom. It's that Sunset, Shimmer, and Sunburst are siblings. Now,
Yes, I've heard that one.
my headcanon is that they are siblings, but I'm thinking probably likely either half siblings or Sunset Shiver was given up for adoption.
Ooh.
So my headcanon is that, Stellar Flare is either the mother of Sunset Shimmer, but she was a young / teen mother at the time and couldn't take care of her, so she gave her up for adoption. But as such, the two never met. And even if it was possible Sunburst was at magic school at the same time as Sunset Shimmer, he never realized the resemblance, and of course he flunked out of magic school eventually anyway. Or it's possible they could be half siblings, like Sunburst's unseen father had an affair, or something like that. Because if you look at their colors and their cutie marks, they do look very similar to each other. I mean, they obviously have to do both heads with the
I
sun.
have a hot take on this that's gonna dispute it a little, if that's okay.
Nameless, can you go first?
I was just gonna say that I have seen this one, mostly the just astronomically complex charts that people make to try and prove this.
Oh yes, I've
the
seen some of
lineage
those as
charts.
well.
Also, Rarity, I spent like 30 minutes trying to poke apart yours, so you are more than welcome to poke apart everybody else's.
It's okay. It's not a total poke apart. It's one of those theories I kind of like, but I more so like the idea that unicorn culture is such that they're very proud of their shiny things. They name themselves Starlight and Sunburst and like Twinkle. Like their whole thing is that they make pretty light magic, and that at one point in history their whole thing was that there were unicorn mages who rose the sun and the moon and stuff. Like they felt responsible for the sun and the stars, and that was a proud thing for them. So I kind of like the thought that it's a very common cultural thing in unicorns that if a baby comes out orange, they're going to be named after the sun.
So
I also I'll let you go first, Nashi.
So I actually have a thing for like the name stuff. Like there, like of course, like there definitely is that trend, of course, but like it's more of a look at the ponies who have those names: Twilight, Starlight, Sunset, Sunburst, Luster Dawn. All of them are ponies who have a talent in magic. So I think it's more specifically they are named that because of the magic, not necessarily just because they're unicorns.
Well, yeah, but there's also ponies like Moon Dancer and Twinkle Shine. Like, there are lots of ponies who aren't super good at magic who still have names after times of day and who are still named after like sparkly things. Like Rarity.
Yeah, I'm not saying like that. I'm not saying
it's
like
an indirect thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying like no, it's not that. I'm just saying like there's also this addition of like we tend to see the more space-ish names are tied with magic.
Yeah, but they also like the little side characters like Sunny Flare, but
to add to what Rarity was saying, actually, they are also so if you look at the show, there's kind of a soft class divide. A lot of the Earth ponies tend to live in places like Ponyville, working farms, and stuff like that. The Pegasi have their own space, and then Canterlot is filled with unicorns to a majority type degree, and they're all very noble, very like
fancy.
So why wouldn't the ones with the magic and the fancy noble type like why wouldn't they give their kids the fancy shiny names?
Yeah, but you also have in like little side character unicorns too, so it just seems like a common thing that if a unicorn comes out purple, they're going to be named after like Dusk or Dawn. If they come out like orange or yellow, they're more likely to be named after the sun. If they come out like a darker color, it might be a night thing. Like it seems like a light blue usually like has some level of like, you know what? You got Trixie Lulamoon. Like Moon is in there. Like it's not like an obvious part of it, but it's still part of her unicorn name. And she's not like a super powerful unicorn either. We have no idea what her pedigree is. For all we know, she's like got two gay dads in Las Pegasus.
She's apparently quite bad at magic.
Yeah, exactly.
She's very good at turning things into teacups.
And her name still has Moon in it, man. But I'm just saying, it's a common thing, and I really do appreciate that headcanon. It's not one I don't like or one I wouldn't use. It's just one that, like, I personally just prefer the idea that it's a coincidence, because that's just such a unicorn move to name your kid that, and then, like, they have similar color palettes, because, like, there are 8 kids in their class named Sun something who look exactly like them. It's like the Emily of like it's like the Emily of unicorn names is Sun something.
I think they're siblings, and I think that Sunset is definitely the older one, and that gives more reason why Sunburst was wanting to go into the school of magic for gifted unicorns and whatnot, because he saw his older sister.
I I
That
actually
would be
kind of
horrible.
liked that more than she is somehow estranged. You know, she
Yeah.
went into school first. She decided that she was too good at this shit for whatever Celestia wanted, and then fucked off to EQG.
Yeah, and if you think about it, right, like let's say she's not too incredibly older, and then because there was a point when Sunburst like quit all of that stuff and just kind of became a recluse. That could have been around the time that Sunset like ran away. You know, he didn't have his inspiration there anymore.
Oh, I
Right.
disputed it, and now I'm going to give it a little point of possible evidence. That village where they're from is very, very far away. If we say that Canterlot High is not like an exclusive school like the School of Magic, that means that Sunset and Sunburst, like the human versions, may not appear in Equestria Girls by this point because they live in the same place that is very, very far away from the main show.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to say this because it kind of struck me as a bit amusing with holy shit, where'd that train of thought go?
Bye-bye. Gotta buy another ticket.
See ya.
Um,
Into the
Never mind, I
never-ending
guess.
nothingness.
I had something there and now it's just
Oof.
gone.
Welcome to my world.
Aw.
Mood.
Oh well. It'll come back.
Get 'em all
I did have a
mixed up.
thought to add to sort of Rarity's dispute, but at the same time evidence, I guess. Well,
Hey, I
it-
told you I like this one, so it's one of those ones I can go either way on.
right. Just
hold on,
sort of
hold
an
on.
interesting
I remember
note,
the thing.
I guess.
I remember the thing. It was kind of funny to me that the moment he got his cutie mark, it was like they were poised to yeet him at the school.
Yep.
Like, if you remember the way the show had it, it was like, oh, you have your cutie mark, go to school.
Yeah. Go to magic school.
Yeah.
And he just left, yeah.
Anyways, continue, Scarlett.
What I was gonna say was related to the unicorn cultural naming conventions with the lights and shiny things, as Ember says. There are some notable exceptions to this, mostly in terms of background ponies, like
Oh yeah, for sure.
Lemon Hearts or Minuet or Lyra Heartstrings. Those don't really.
Yeah, but a lot
Dillies.
of Earth ponies and Pegasi also have names that aren't like the normal convention.
True,
So it's like
true.
everybody's got their unique name set.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that there's a tendency, like, you'll have these set naming conventions, and then you just have Bob.
yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate the way like Earth ponies in particular seem to like really want to set into a family name of some sort of way. Like you have
Yeah.
like Twilight mom naming her after herself, which is funny. But
Yeah,
like, the apples are
Yeah.
like, okay, we got to stick to a theme, and the pies are like, okay, we're going to make up a name that sounds human, but like we don't know humans exist, and like it's gonna be
Italian.
like that. But you have like names like Limestone and Marble and Igneous, and then you have Maud. Like you're like, okay, our thing is that we're a combination of rocks and people.
Like, I get it that like mod pie is it's a pun on mud pie, but like still, it just sudden that hi, I have a human name.
Yeah, I just love that for her. Modelina.
it
Modelina
kinda-
doesn't sound like anything other than like a mid 1800s human name.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like one of those, like, it kind of has the same vibe as the Bob thing, except it's Robert.
Yeah.
What the heck? Okay, so apparently mod is old German and it means powerful battler, like powerful warrior.
She's right. That is she's
I mean,
one of
she
those.
fits that.
Holy shit.
That's
cool.
Interesting.
The dopest character.
The little
Yes.
things that you never notice until it's just like random.
I really want to ask the show stuff. Why did y'all call her Maud? Like, did they just pick that name because it sounds like a really dull name?
I mean, that could be a factor. I think it just suited her, you know? Sometimes you look at a horse and it's like, that one's name is Pristine. No notes. Like, or that guy is Marley. done. Like, you just know sometimes.
Casey Turnip Truck.
Exactly.
Casey Turnip Truck.
That was a perfect name. No notes. Ideal name. Like
So
every once in a
fun.
while you just hit on gold.
Okay, so fun side note. I did actually look at some of the leaked show files. Don't do that, by the way. It's illegal. And what one of the things that was really interesting to me is that they really had to go through a lot to name their stuff early on. I don't know about later, but early on they went through a lot, especially like I remember seeing like a list of like 50 names and they ended up choosing Winona for the dog, right?
wow.
But there were
Love
50
Winona.
other names. And
Winona's
and they
my favorite.
and like they had to go through like copyright or trademark searches and all this stuff because of course they wanted to make these toys and all that.
Right.
And it was just
Right.
really interesting that they couldn't just come up with a name. They really had to focus on it.
I mean,
At
even
least early
just
on.
even just with like the idea of like, oh, we're making it for the show, you still want to do copyright checks because it's actually a lot harder nowadays to name a channel on YouTube because you got to go make sure that you're not one of like 8,000 because that makes it harder for you to be found, and then you got to make sure it's not like copyrighted by someone. Yeah, that just makes sense. But before we get off on another side tangent about names, and it is now Saf's turn.
Oh crap. Why is it my turn?
I go last. Thank you.
Alright.
So
Wait, am I like the second to last?
Yes.
Oh.
We went in a line so I wouldn't forget anybody.
Well, I see how it is. Alright. So my headcanon. Hold on, let me load these files into my brain here for a second. Spike. Alright. Spike's age. I don't think Spike is as young as the show says. Now, I'm going to preface it with this. I think that the later seasons completely didn't consider this stuff and just kind of rewrote him to being a prepubescent teen, which that's why those later seasons aren't canon. So if the writers aren't going to put forth the effort to think about what the effects of their stuff is going to be, then it's not canon. Anywho. So that's half joking. So I personally think that Spike isn't like a literal child. They call him a baby dragon because he looks like a baby. But if you remember that Spike Greed episode where he turned into a big dragon, that was one of the first times we ever learned about dragon growth cycles in the show. And it was really early seasons. And so, like, I don't remember if it was in there or not, if they said it explicitly, but the implication was that he was always going to stay looking like a baby dragon because he would never indulge in the greedy side of him, which would cause his body to mature into a full-size dragon. So we don't really know how old he is.
Didn't Twilight hatch him?
Yeah, Twilight.
Yes, but when she was like 4 years old or something, she was like really young.
They use those Philly bodies on like kids who might be upwards of 12. Like they don't really change the Philly thing from like, I think toddlers, like 5-year-olds, have their own set. So we know she was over 5.
Also, we know that.
But before you
we know that ponies get their cutie marks when they're like 12, like 10, 11, 12-ish, going by like how old the CMC must be.
Hold on a second, though. Hold on a second. Before y'all run with that, she remember the whole thing about Magic Kindergarten, right? She was in Princess Celestia's Magic Kindergarten thing. Like, that was a thing. So she probably got in way earlier than many others. And even regardless, when we see her in the show, she's like probably like just graduating college age. So like 20, 21 years old ish. which would probably make Spike, even if she was like 5 or something, which would probably make him at least a teenager, age-wise. Right.
Yeah, but it's still weird
Um,
to ship him with adult characters.
So, well, here's the thing I was getting to, right? The show staff actually put they were required to put a lot of the early season things past childhood educators to make sure that they weren't saying or conveying inappropriate messages to children or teaching them the wrong things that would cause issues. And I haven't seen it myself. I've seen some of those, but I don't think that they would allow him to have a crush on her and her to. She didn't she acknowledged it, yeah, but she didn't ever go for it, right? Because he was too young for her. I don't think they would have let that happen if it was such an age gap that it would have been extremely inappropriate. But also to make to just also say this, I mean, the teen boys have crushes on older women all the time.
Yeah, and
So,
I've seen it in a ton of kid shows. Like, it's a very common thing for like the little kid brother of the main character or something to have a kid crush on that character's best friend, who's like it's like the difference between an 8-year-old and a 16-year-old. Like that sort of thing happens all the time, and there are like whole jokes about little kids hitting on hot moms. Like that happens all the time in kid shows.
Yeah.
But would also say that he's also very emotionally mature at times. He either ends up being the butt of the joke or he ends up being the more mature one among them.
Right.
And you could sometimes chalk that up to, oh, Ick, is he's just a typical boy, doesn't like the girly things. But
when I was 14,
I think he's
everybody
older.
compared me to a grandma.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you're chronically online like the rest of us. You're special.
Not when I was 14.
Well, not when I was 14 either, but still.
Yeah, but when I was 14 is when people most compared me to an elderly woman. Like they were constantly
same
telling
here.
me
I was
when
called an old man all the time, but I realized
like-
that in retrospect, that's because I had childhood trauma.
Yeah,
So-
but as a result, like maturity or apparent maturity in a kid isn't always a sign that the kid is older. It's a sign that like they really grew up around stress cases who needed a straight man.
That is true, and Twilight was a nut job. So
Exactly.
Yeah, she was.
Like,
So-
I think he parentified himself to be Twilight's friend. Like,
yeah, but like I said, I think he's a little bit. I don't think he's literally a baby dragon. I think he's a lot older than like an 8-year-old. So
yeah, but we also don't know how old they live. So it's
That's
baby
true.
by dragon standards to be like 8 or even like 18.
I was actually about
possibly.
to bring that up. We do have an example of a dragon who, for all intents and purposes, seems to be functionally immortal, just like an Alicorn.
At least 1,000.
You remember Torch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amber's
Torch,
dad.
the big one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he is and it seems like a very strange thing to just say asset reuse for, but he is one of the dragons chasing Flash Magnus, I believe was his name.
True.
Yeah.
And
True.
Flash Magnus, they disappear. The sisters grow older and deal with Discord. The Nightmare Moon thing happens, and we know for a fact between Nightmare Moon and the events of the show, that's 1,000 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Which means he's well over 1,000 years old, along with...
True.
Actually, technically, he would be older, significantly older than the Alicorns in the show.
Because he was already big and an adult by the Flash Magnus incident.
Yeah.
So for all we know, Spike might be a baby until he's 806.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
And also, like I said, because at least in the early lore of the dragon maturation, he would never even evolve past the state of being that little stubby creature that walks around on
Love
the ground
stubby
compared
babies.
to
So-
this. Yeah.
So I like to think that like the greed induced growth from I always forget that episode's name.
Secret
Secret of My Excess. There we go.
Yeah, yeah.
Haha, I know things.
I always assume that like that's more of like a magical phenomenon and not like part of their natural growth cycle. Like
I mean, if you look at the other young
because
dragons,
like he does turn back after he realizes what the fuck he's doing.
yeah,
That is true.
and if you look
Well,
at the
yeah.
other young dragons, they look closer to Dorito Spike.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Spike.
So
Dorito? What do you mean Dorito Spike?
How
look
Spike
at the
looks
shape
in
of his
my
body when he
problem.
get look,
Oh, I thought you meant that's Chad Spike. No, the other one's Chad Spike. Never mind.
but yeah, if you look at the way that he ages for that, I think that potentially it could take him hundreds, if not thousands, of years to get to the point that Torch was at.
Right.
Yeah.
So does that make like Garble, like
Garble's like 40.
200 years old or some shit?
It's
Like-
it's
Possibly,
a potential. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
that's interesting, and that also like has implications for like, you know, he'll probably be like Twilight's only remaining friend.
Ooh.
Assuming that
Yeah.
Twilight lives as long as the other Alicorns.
Right.
She might not.
I
Yeah,
think-
we
I don't-
only know she has a heroic sacrifice on the horizon. We don't know these things.
Mhm.
To kind of throw in a parallel one that goes along those lines. Alicorns. What do y'all think about them? Do you think that like Celestia and Luna? I'm not talking about the baby episode, the stupid baby episode. I hate that one. Oh, we never seen a natural born ally.
I know what you're about to say. So I have made multiple videos actually at this point with multiple people talking about this. That is canon that they are natural born alicorns because the Diary of the Two Sisters, most people will go, oh, that's not canon because there's zebras in it. That's
What?
not. Yeah.
But there's zebras in the show.
Yeah.
What?
So the season 10 comics talks about a zebra homeland, and
Yeah.
like
Huh.
you get to visit it in the comics, which they are A tier canon, to use the term that Nashi
Yeah,
introduced.
I read those because I had
the
to voice
books are
Sakura.
A canon, the comics are B canon. So what the books say outweighs what the comics say.
Wait, is that all the books, including the novelizations?
Yes.
Okay, making sure because the
Yeah,
novelization sometimes
so yeah,
like
the books,
slightly
the
contradicts
show,
the actual
and-
like show.
Yeah. The show. So the show outranks everything. What's said in the show. If the show contradicts anything said anywhere else, it is
Well,
it
season
is the one with the final say.
10
for
is actually
everything-
considered the show, essentially.
Yeah.
I
So
have a video
then-
on that as well.
So then the comics would win in this situation if that's the case.
Well,
So okay, Nameless, you
the
were saying
argument-
about
The argument I
About
make
the
about the zebras is that they can make colonies. It's not.
Yeah.
They have to
There's
find
just
out about
one
the alicorns
collection
somehow.
of zebras in the entire world.
But
okay, so
other than
back
that,
to the alicorns.
back to the alicorns. So the sisters, two things that they can confirm pretty much in the first chapter. One, they were taught by other alicorns the alicorn voice, and two, Canterlot existed before Equestria did, and it was a home for the alicorns. It is never discussed where the other alicorns went, but it is essentially they were baby alicorns before they met the. Because I know one of the most popular theories is Sawtooth's theory that when they were just unicorns until they raised the sun and moon. That does not work because they are noted to be alicorns. At which point they also acknowledge that they got made fun of by the princess of I believe it was the Earth Ponies, because they didn't have cutie marks yet.
I
Because
think the Earth Ponies had princesses. Didn't they have like a chancellor?
then it must have been. It was not the main one. It was the daughter of one of them.
Yeah, but the daughter of a chancellor wouldn't be a princess.
I don't
Is all I'm saying.
I don't remember what they called them off the top of my head, and it may have been the unicorn one. But either way, they make fun of them for not having cutie marks, and when the sisters acknowledge this in the diary, what they say is that they're, because of the fact that they are alicorns, it is perfectly fine that they don't have it, but it is distressing because you have a bunch of ponies telling them that they are blank flanks and making fun of them, essentially.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But yeah, they've also been noted to have been living in and around Canterlot for a while now, before they meet any of the what would become Equestria. The weird thing is that they show up and they almost immediately get saddled with ruling Equestria.
Lol.
But yeah,
Talk about premature responsibility.
technically speaking,
Yeah.
and people will argue with you about this, but technically speaking, it is canon that they were born as natural-born alicorns.
So what you're saying
Yeah.
is Minty Root's beginning of Harmony animation is more canon than the stupid
So
Flurry Heart episode.
I actually, so talking about this, I actually have a thing. So I don't think they meant like, so they specifically first natural born alicorn in Equestria, not.
They were born before
As-
Equestria.
Yeah, they were born before Equestria,
Oh,
so
that's
like
true.
they're literally
okay.
not wrong upon saying that. They just
No.
literally never seen natural born alicorn since
Not to
Equestria
mention,
was founded.
there's two other issues that you can look at. One, Cadence isn't a natural alicorn.
She
was a Pegasus.
Yep, she was a Pegasus who got ascended like Twy.
And
That was
it's not a
Good for
union
her.
between a alicorn and an alicorn. It's a union between an alicorn and a unicorn. There's two possibilities with that either they were expecting a unicorn because of shining armor, or that they were expecting that they couldn't have kids because of the same idea as, say, a mule, where they're sterile.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been really funny if they somehow ended up with an Earth pony.
The way
That
one
would
of
be a fun thing
the
to play with.
angles that I actually took looking at it was that there is a potential that you can essentially get, for lack of a better word, an inert alicorn, where essentially you hit a genetic jackpot, and they're just born with all traits, but they're not an alicorn proper because they didn't have an alicorn parent. Because you have the cakes giving birth to a Pegasus and a unicorn. So who
Although
knows
that
how
one
their
could
genetics
also
works?
be chalked up to Mr. Cake playing around, but you don't know.
Or Mrs. Cake.
Mr. Cake.
Yeah. Either
Mr.
of
Cake
them,
isn't
really.
the one who gave birth, as far as I know.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was about to
okay.
say-
I just
sorry,
went and
sorry.
watched it. I just went and watched the clip, and you're right. It says the birth of an alicorn is something that Equestria has never seen. This goes beyond even our understanding, is what they say. Those are their exact words.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense because, it would make sense if it was two natural-born alicorns, but an artificial or ascended alicorn, as I like to call them, and a unicorn, that doesn't mathematically seem like it should work.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, it might just
Planet
be
squares don't
tweak.
compute.
It might just be like one of those quirks of genetics. Like,
Or it might be because they're near the Crystal Heart, which is one of those weird alicorn ancient artifacts, as far as I remember.
It's extremely powerful, and it is based off of the combination of the powers of all of the three races.
I always had this thought that thing always gave me vibes of the Heart of Atlantis from the Lost Empire. It has such similar vibes to me. It's this magical power source that keeps the place safe, and it seems like it runs on essentially love. The other one takes souls of dead kings or whatever, but for all we know, everybody, the imprint of everybody's love has given it a sentience like the Heart of Atlantis has, and that's part of how its magic runs.
So what you're
we don't
saying
know.
is Flurry Heart is a changeling.
No, what I'm saying is Flurry
That's why
Heart
she's so
is,
powerful.
yeah.
And
Well,
it's going back
I
to my
do
theory
think
all over
that
again.
like quote unquote the heart of the Crystal Empire, like it knows what it's doing. I think the crystalling just like pumped her up.
So
Thank you for pointing out that thing though, Nashi, because that one rubbed me wrong the whole time, like about what they said, but putting it in the context of like, oh, in Equestria, that makes sense. And I
Yeah,
think you
no
pointed
worries.
that out too, Nameless.
Yeah,
I
I'm done with that topic. I don't have anything else to
MLP
add.
as my hyperfixation. I have so many like little random things in my brain that like probably I shouldn't shouldn't bother to remember, but it's there.
That's so
Feel that?
fair. I feel like for me, like the ancient lore was never something I super cared about. Like all I have is like a non-serious headcanon that there was some sort of like magic like hyperfertility fruit somewhere in the water supply that made it so that you could have a bunch of weird animal hybrids, and that's why there are chimeras and griffins and pegasi.
actually,
It's
there's
like,
a
Actually,
canon.
that's caused by the transformium that's all over the place.
I'm pretty sure
after
isn't.
the Earth fell to the war of the
I'm pretty
the
sure
Cybertronians and
the
humans.
canon answer is that Grogar had something to do with it.
Yeah,
you know what?
so
Maybe, but I still think
Grogar
it's funny
used
that
his
everybody was just drinking the juice.
yeah, so Grogar used his magic to like fuse a bunch of animals together, and that's like where a lot of the monsters came from
And how
because
did they
like
reproduce?
they didn't.
So are we saying that every single like
Or they
caucus race
could,
we see,
but like but or they could, but it's
I mean, we never see them reproduce.
strange. But yeah, but like the reason why
Obviously, it's a kid show.
but like in
But you can see
Yeah,
babies.
that's
in,
tough.
in this season 8 ender, we see like as the magic's getting sucked out of the world, all the chimeras that we see in Tartarus are falling apart into like the different animals that they were before.
yeah, but what about griffins and pegasi? Like I'm saying that there had to have been some weirdness happening there.
Well, they're a
wouldn't they
little bit
fall apart?
more brash and
I don't know,
They're
man.
more sapient.
One of those ponies really liked hanging out with some type of bird. That's for sure.
Anywho,
Like-
before this gets
God.
weird, I'm gonna take this for my turn now.
Sure.
So this
Go for
one,
it.
this one I've done several times, and it is probably one of my favorites. So actually, I think Rarity might like this one too. So you guys know Nightmare Moon. She's big. She's evil. So this theory that I have is essentially that Nightmare Moon is never it's never actually fully Luna. It is a separate entity that is in control as Nightmare Moon. Now, what I call it is the Nightmare Parasite, and there is actually some proof for it as well. This is why it's a theory. First off, the Nightmare Parasite in so I am going to use this part is technically a little non-canon. I don't know exactly what portions of this comic are non-canon, but Nightmare Moon, when she's on the moon, essentially leaves a footprint, which is the magic that essentially the way to think about it is think about it as magic runoff. She essentially just there's so much power coming out of hers that she leaves a stain, and that coalesces into a sentient thing that tries to make Rarity into Nightmare Rarity to continue Nightmare Moon's thing.
So all of that is fully canon since we don't have anything in the show or books that contradict it. So yes,
I was told that one was contradicted by the show.
What part? Like the tentacles?
Yeah, what part? I don't remember like anyone ever like saying anything to hint that like the nightmare does not exist.
Well, not the nightmare, but just like the storyline.
I mean, we see it dissipate from like Luna, but it's not like that means it's gone forever. It could have been like lying in wait.
I'm getting off track. I'll get to that point. So that's one example. Another example that I use is So this nightmare parasite is something that I essentially have for this theory. In any pony has the potential to essentially create one. One of my biggest examples for that is all bottled up. If you remember, when she opens the bottle, rather than coming back to her, it goes,
infected the nearest thing,
and it reacts on those negative emotions.
Yep.
Now, why I call it a parasite is because that it feeds off of the negative emotions. And the reason why I take that is because of the Tantibus. So the Tantibus, now, this kind of goes into like more of a fantasy view of it. They essentially did brain surgery with a howitzer. So it's going to leave things behind. Now, Luna's not all-knowing. Neither is Celestia. We see him fuck up several times, even though like half of the fandom seems to treat them like they are all-knowing, and they can't fail at anything.
Right.
They may be
The Twilight
beings, but they're not.
Sometimes.
They're not infallible.
Freaking infallible. They're not omniscient or anything.
So when she does the equivalent of a mental self-flagellation through the dream realm, what she does is unknowingly grab the pieces of Nightmare Moon and squish them together to make the Tantibus.
Yep.
And now she's feeding a creature that relies on negative emotions to build up itself. And that's why when it starts trying to escape, it turns into a actual like unicorn, or possibly alicorn. It was too indistinctly shaped to really tell if there were wings.
Yeah, it's kind of like a hole in space that just was vaguely pony-shaped.
And her acceptance of herself deprived it of the continued, essentially, nutrition.
Emotional energy.
Yeah. Now, if she had been allowed to continue, so we know she's already being fed off by this parasite. The parasite's in control. It essentially tricked her into allowing it to take control. You know, we can make it so that she will notice you, essentially.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So whenever it goes to become Nightmare Moon, it gets sent to the moon, she gets more powerful, spends more time draining Luna. That explains the season 1, like that initial like tiny Luna design. She's not got the wavy mane of Celestia. She's significantly shorter even than her next appearance in Nightmare Night, as well as the fact that she's got a lighter coat too. Like she's vastly weakened. What were you gonna say, Nashi?
Yeah, I just have like a quick comment on the little Luna design. That like I think like alicorns have two forms, like also using Twi as an example, where they have like their big powered up form, which we see in like Celestia and Luna, and then series finale Twi, and then we have like their smaller, more normal pony proportion self, where they're not as powerful.
But when they gave Twilight their magic, they change their form?
I think that might be because that wasn't her magic. We saw her mane like turn all starry and flowy whenever she tapped into it.
The way that I look at it is kind of like
when they gave her the magic, they didn't change.
Oh.
The way that I look at it is kind of more of like a measuring stick for how powerful and how old they are at the same time. Which is why when they gave her their magic, it wasn't the same as having something drain it over the course of 1,000 years. Because she was also, like, supposedly, depending on where you look, Celestia was also pink-maned at one point.
Yep.
I don't know if that's actually a canon thing, because there's
I think
a lot
I want to say that was in
That was in the
one of
first
books-
episode in the
Yeah.
very beginning on the storybook part.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
and
there's that
was-
too.
But that could have just been an illustration that simplified her to
But
one color.
I
and
swear there was like one of the books or something.
But,
also,
I'm a-
but whatever.
I'm gonna continue because that's kind of beside the point.
Yeah.
So I continue the theory with if she had not been defeated, if Luna had not been freed from Nightmare Moon, which is also it's often termed as her being freed, and she does as well seem to be very disoriented. Like, she's aware enough of what happened to feel ashamed of it because she feels like she should have been able to resist, or like she misunderstands what's going on, or like any number of reasons why she feels guilt for it. But if she had been allowed to continue, we actually have an example of what I believe would have happened to her. Everybody remember the Pony of Shadows?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I
He
remember
has-
the Pony of Shadows. But there's
And we also got our freaking nightmare fuel of Zalgo coming out of him.
So
But there's also the episode where she won in the alternate universe.
Yeah.
and I'll touch on that. But with the Pony of Shadows, we don't know how old he is, but he predates Equestria. That much is obvious. So potentially, he could be the first Nightmare Alicorn that ever existed in the history of Equestria, and that's what they have to look forward to if they fully turn to the dark side. It could be that is all that is left is the Nightmare Parasite, which is why it needs a host to be able to hold its form.
I like that idea a lot, actually.
I always thought that was just what it was.
Well, not everybody does, apparently, because I've had quite a few people try to argue me on this one. But with the question on when she won, that one, by the looks of the timeline, was close enough to the same time that it would not have been long enough for her to fully be just like gone. So she would have had her full like Nightmare Moon form instead of turning into something akin to the Pony of Shadows.
Mhm.
And
I just,
go ahead.
it's just like this feels essentially like a species of magic. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it kind of relates back to what Nashi was saying about like there being the Tree of Harmony deciding to sacrifice itself. It's like this is essentially the two opposing purest forms of good and evil magic in their universe.
Yeah, I already brought that up. It's like, it's just interesting to me that like this is a universe where essentially like the Pony of Shadows and the Nightmare Parasite thing, like they are the same species of dark energy. It's just neat.
The one of the things that I also like to point out too is that for Starlight, hers was very like it only carried her emotions. So it makes me think that while yes, you can have a version of that for regular ponies, the Alicorns are the ones that are the ticking time bombs, the attempted world dominations, because they're the only ones powerful enough.
Stygian?
What's up?
Wasn't the first one Stygian? Wasn't he just a unicorn?
Yeah, he was
True.
just a unicorn.
Well, Stygian's taking on somebody else's Nightmare Parasite.
Okay.
Because the
so it's
Pony
kind
of
of like
Shadows, even independently...
It's a nightmare-y thing again.
Yeah, even independently, it will take on an Alicorn form. And
Right.
that makes me think that it's the remains of a different Nightmare Alicorn. It's just the parasite that's left now, because it consumed its host.
Yeah.
So it needed a new host to be able to more accurately hold its form. Because it's not meant to survive without without a host. So he got somebody else's, whereas with Starlight, hers was very just be angry at Trixie because it's not as much power as what a Alicorn can output compared to even with her at being one of the most powerful unicorns that we actually see in the show by sheer feats of magical strength.
I do think there's also an element of how deep-seated the resentment was to begin with.
True.
Like, this was very much an impulsive, like, oh, she's really annoying me today, instead of, like, something that's been building up for years and years and years.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, that would,
with the others.
With my theory, that would give it more. So, one thing that Sawtooth, because he's one of the ones that I've done this video with, proposed is that because the Umbrum are supposed to be non-canon, it is potential that Sombra is the culmination of a nightmare parasite in a unicorn that was allowed to fester.
Mm.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, actually, that does sort of make sense.
Ice isn't here to have an aneurysm over the fact that I am pointing that out, but there are a lot of people that don't like that specific one because the Umbrum are very interesting. And
Well,
what's up?
I still see the Umbrum as being canon because, again, there's nothing that in any other part of the media that says they aren't.
I've been told that the entirety of the comic line that they came from, the whole Crystal Empire section there, got decanonized by the show. So I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out where that would have happened.
But yeah, that would be my my theory. One that I have spread over the internet already. You can find versions of it on Windstriker and the Deleted Pony Archives channels.
Oh, can I give you two just really quick ones that, like, I will not be taking notes on? They're just, like, things I want to throw out onto the universe that will not take long.
Sure.
Okay. One of them is, remember how the pears left Ponyville?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I have a theory that major, like, vampire fruit bat infestation that, like, devastated Ponyville and, like, traumatized Granny Smith and has, like, Applejack terrified of a new, like, infestation happened because the pears left and they were not able to defend their trees. So the pear fields were a breeding ground for them for possibly a couple years. And then they ascended on the apples.
I like that idea.
That is actually really interesting.
Yeah, so that was one of my thoughts. And then, of course, that would feed, like, the seething, continuing hatred because they came from the pear fields and they see the direction the vampires keep going back from and they think it's like a trap they left. My other one is Pony Life is a text group RP being done by the Equestria Girls teenagers. No notes, that's what I'm saying happened.
That's actually hilarious. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are my two headcanons that, like, one of them makes sense, and the other one's just like, I think this is fun and feasible, so I'm just gonna say it. Like, no one can fight me. They have no idea what these girls text about.
Anyways, for those of you that may or may not still be watching, if you enjoyed that and would like to see more of it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell, follow on Twitch. We will be going live again tomorrow for Lost Memories, Second Chances, and then Sunday will be the Heart of Darkness. And of course, if you follow me on Twitch, we will be going live to play Space Marine. We will be recording it for a second channel that I will be launching soon with a friend of mine. Other than that, everybody have a great evening. Don't forget to drink water. Big thank you to my priest tier Patreons, Cameo Shadowless, Ice Crystal, and Scarmex, and of course to all of the other YouTube memberships, Twitch subs, and all other good stuff. If you want to support me, links in the description. And I think I got everything, so everybody have a great evening. Don't forget to drink water.
Hydrate or dihydrate.
Water's
See ya!
tasty.
I have water right now.